I noticed right away when I was growing up, like certain friends of mine, like let's say for Christmas, they would just get showered with Christmas presents, yet they
Hmm.
couldn't take care of some other basic necessities. They couldn't do certain other things. Where my parents never really showered us with tons and tons of gift. They would say, what's one thing you'd want? So they would make sure we got the one thing, and then maybe a small item here or there. But I was like, man, we don't get as much as the other guys. But then the other guys couldn't do like so many basic things. But my
Yeah.
parents always like took care of the basics. That was not a problem. We always went away on vacations in the summertime. They always planned to make sure that the basics and the big things were always taken care of, and they would set aside money for those types of things. Whereas I had friends that just never did. You could tell
Hmm.
that their parents just never had it together. They would just, if they got money, they would spend the money. If they got money, they would spend the money. But then they would have these gaps where they didn't. They just couldn't do things. And the mentality, oh, we can't afford that or we can't do that. My parents didn't really say things like that. My dad would joke around sometimes to say that. I think when we were really young, we'd be like, Dad, how much do you make? Dad, how much do you make? And of course he says, I don't make much, or the garbage man makes more than me, or this or that, just to kind of play down things. As we got older, we would just realize, okay, well, mom and dad don't like to spend on this, or mom and dad don't like to
Yeah.
spend on that. You don't, honestly, I don't think you have enough knowledge to understand like why they do what they do, right?
Yeah.
You don't sit in there and think, yeah, but we always have food on the table. Yeah, but we always do this. We always have clothes. We always have this. Do I have
Hmm.
the best clothes? Do I have the latest sneakers all the time? No, you know, but then again, that's not how they were raised in India too. They're not
Yeah.
in India. They're not like, oh, let fashion icons. It was more or less, take care of the basics. So I noticed that there was a big difference between like how I was being raised and others. Now, granted, at the time, I didn't think it was the best thing. I was like, oh, this kind of stinks. I don't have this and I don't have that and I don't get this and I don't
Yeah.
get that. But you're a kid, right? You're comparing against everybody else. And of course, you
Yeah.
don't compare the positive things, you compare the negative things.
Of
But
course.
then as you start
Yeah.
getting older, you start realizing, that, oh, this is the reason why. And when you start working out there and you start having bills and you're like, okay, well, I
Hmm.
got to make sure I plan for, I'm a big believer in planning things out, especially finances. That you have to have reserves, you have to have this, amount here or there,
Hmm.
just, have things set aside for responsibilities. And I tell my kids, not sure how much they actually believe or listen to what it is, but you'd figure it's got to penetrate somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, no kidding. And it's funny because the one thing that I asked if, what you got from your parents that you pass on to your kids. And the first thing you said was like budgets and, and saving money and that type of
Financial
thing. So,
responsibility. Yeah.
do your kids pick up rather well? Like, was that something that you started at a young age? Was that something that, kind of, it took a little while to grow into, or how did you start to expose them to budgets? And I'm assuming, to add on to that, is that's kind of why you started doing the business side of it as well on your business. When you left, is all of that going in together? Like, this is just what I know, it's what I like to do. So I'm teaching it to my kids and I'm doing it myself.
That's exactly right. Yeah, yeah. In my own weekly budget that I would look at to see, what were the expenses, what was the income, where are we lining up with all that type of stuff. But with the kids too, like they knew I was very much into looking at statistics. I would look at my statistics once a week. So one of the responsibilities at that time, I think it was 8 or 10 years old, Summer, who's now 18, was doing was I would have my office staff write down certain key statistics that I needed, right? He would take those statistics and plot them into this program that I have, which would make a graph for me. So I can easily take a look at the graph of all these statistics. He got so good at doing it, he would recognize that, hey, this employee here over here, they're not doing as well as they were before, or something's up over in this area because look, the statistics are off.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then we would see that, hey, either somebody's not calculating something right or somebody's not doing their job properly. So I think he understood from a young age that these statistics mean something,
Yeah.
in and of itself. You can't run the company by looking at the statistics, but you do find key areas that something could be wrong. And that way you can look into that specific area.
Yeah, for sure.
And then he would get paid on a weekly basis. He would get paid for doing that. And then we would tell him, and I don't remember the exact dollar amount, but let's say it was $10, but you can't have all 10 of it. You have to pretend that 2 of it doesn't exist and you can only play or do something with the $8. The 2 is savings that you will never be able, not, I shouldn't say never, that will just sit there and we'll deposit that in the bank and that'll be for a rainy day or for in the future. Did he like it? No. But that's what it was. It's like you have to set money aside for savings.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he knew.
I never learned that. That's for sure. It took me a long time to learn the whole savings side. So well done on teaching it early. But, so when did you transition? So how old were your kids? Your oldest is 17. You said right now 18. My
18.
notes are we're 18. So, and you talked about, I mean, that was 10 years ago. You said he was 8 or 10 when he was doing it.
About, yeah.
So when did you transition from employee to business owner, entrepreneur?
Myself? When did I do
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
Probably in 2004 is when
Okay,
I started opening my practice. Prior to that, I think I
okay,
graduated in 1998 or something like that. And
okay.
then I opened my own in 2004.
So for 6 years, then you were working for somebody else, learning the practice, doing all your stuff.
Yeah, I think even prior to that, I started some
What was it
stuff,
that
but I
you
think
said?
I officially
Well,
said
you
I
said
was
reach
leaving.
that
So what
for
happened with mine?
was one of the impetuses.
I ran two offices for somebody else, and I don't know if you heard that, but I ran two offices for somebody
Yep.
else, and then my hours that I made for myself were Monday, Wednesday, and Friday all day. I would work 13 and a half
Okay.
hours a day. So it let me Tuesday, Thursdays, I was free. So Tuesday, Thursdays, and Saturdays, I opened up my own practice, which was, very far from my original practice that I worked for somebody
Hmm.
else. So I kind of started that process going right away. So, for a while I was busting my hump, as you could tell, if you're working all
Yeah.
day, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then Tuesday, Thursdays, and Saturdays until I was generating enough income that it was matching or more than matching my full time salary. So then when I left my full time salary, it wasn't like I was hurting. There was no
Yeah.
there was no point. You know, so
And
that made it an
dates
easier
lined up pretty
transition
well too, because
financially.
you're yeah, it lined up pretty well because in 2004 you're that sounds like already replaced that income with your own personal business, and then 2005 is when your first child is born. So like, okay, we've got some freedom. I'm running my own companies. I'm kind of able to do this
Yeah.
now. Was that a strategic decision to say let's wait to have kids until then, or was it just like that's just how the time?
No, we were actually pregnant at the time when I left my job. I knew I think 8 months pregnant or so, and I said, okay, now it's I could leave the job and not feel it financially. You know, I
Nice.
wasn't utilizing the money that I was making in my private practice. It was sitting in a bank account, so I had saved it, so I knew it was there. It was almost like an
Mm-hmm.
emergency fund. So I still maintained living off of what I was making my salary on. So it wasn't like
Nice.
I doubled my salary and I was like, oh, look at the life that we have. I can have a fancy car. I can
Yeah.
do this. I was still living off the primary income. And then the other amount, I just put it into savings. And then, if I needed to pull from that, I could. But by that time, I had enough flow coming in that it was just, give me
Mm-hmm.
more. Now all of a sudden, I had Monday, Wednesday, and Friday free. So my income
Yeah.
generating hours increased significantly.
That's it. I think that I'm very guilty of this myself as I'm still as an adult learning a little bit more about being wise financially. Like I said, I didn't really know what a savings account was until I met my wife. So my life changed dramatically from that to never having invested to now buying hundreds of apartment doors and like running
Yeah.
businesses and doing all this stuff. So huge difference in my life. But I still catch myself going back into some of my old habits of overspending or I never went into a bunch of debt, and I'm still, not a fan of going into a bunch of debt by any means, unless it's good debt. But very wise move of you to say, hey, let's just still stick to the one salary. Let's, stick this stuff aside and keep it rolling. Um, was that something that like, do you now, or did you then like have business coaches on how to kind of start your own stuff, or did you just kind of play around with it and figure it out as you went?
So actually, that's a really interesting story. What happened? I guess up till now, up to me starting my practice, no, I didn't talk. I didn't have business coaches. I didn't have anything. I actually just had friends that were opening their private practice. So basically, I would call my friends up. What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Asking all these
Yeah.
people. Well, once I started, excuse me, my own private practice, and I was kind of going along, and I was building my patient volume, and I realized I said, if I keep doing this, I'm going to max out at some point. You know, but it's still not the kind of income that I really want to make. I need to figure
Hmm.
out a better play. I keep asking Joe Schmo and Fred over here, like what they're doing. What do they know? They're just doing whatever they think is right. But like I was
Yeah.
professionally trained to be a physical therapist, but nobody's training me to be a business owner. I'm just taking different
Hmm.
stabs at it, and some things work, some things don't. So there's got to be a better way. So some people told me about different CEO programs that you can get or actually go to and learn how to be a business owner. So a friend of mine told me about this company down in Florida, and I said, okay, let me go down. They had a free thing that I went to. I went there and I listened to them, and believe it or not, they were very specific to physical therapy. They literally will train you to be an owner of a physical therapy company and a CEO and be able to how to actually increase your operations and grow. And I was like, this is what I need. Like, I need this
Mm-hmm.
type of structure to get me from A to where I want to, A to Z. So I had, I think, $55,000 saved up in the bank by that point, and they were offering me a program, which is basically like a 5-year CEO training program for, like, I don't know, I forget how much it was, but I put down exactly $35,000 right then and there. And
Wow.
everybody else was looking at me like, what are you, crazy? I was like, if I don't put it down and go all in, it won't happen. And if it
Yeah.
doesn't happen, all I'm going to be doing is 10 years from now going, I'm still doing the same thing I was doing before, and I'm still making the same complaints that I was complaining about before, but I'm not doing anything about it. So once I put that money down, I was 100% vested. There was no, oh, let me back out of it.